In April 2013, police found a camp hidden in a Maine forest. There were hundreds of empty propane cylinders rising from the earth, a radio antenna fixed to a tree that had been cut down, tied to, and then re-erected, stacks of magazines bound with tape forming the floor, multiple sleeping bags layered on top of one another, and books. Many books. The man who lived there had spent 27 years in that place, without speaking to anyone, without a single conversation, without a single friend, without a single day inside a house. And when he was finally found, the first thing he told the police was that he didn't know the name of the lake beside which he had lived for nearly 3 decades. This is not a story about madness. It's a story about what happens when someone simply decides the world is not for them. Christopher Thomas Knight was born on the December 7th, 1965, in Albion, Maine, the middle child of 6, in a family that was extraordinarily intelligent and extraordinarily closed. The Knights read Shakespeare aloud in the evenings, studied thermodynamics for fun, and built a greenhouse beneath which they buried hundreds of gallons of water, exploiting the heat absorbed by water molecules during the day to grow vegetables through the Maine winter without paying a cent for electricity. It was the kind of family that could solve any practical problem with their own hands and saw very little reason to depend on anyone else. Christopher was the quietest of all of them. He avoided large gatherings, preferred books to people, was skilled with mechanics, electronics, and forest exploration. After high school, he completed a technical course in electronics and found work installing residential security systems, a job in which he learned with professional precision exactly how to defeat alarms, unlock doors, and avoid detection. He was competent, he was reliable, and he was completely unhappy. In April 1986, at 20 years old, Christopher Knight got in his car and left. He told no one. He didn't inform his boss. He left no note. He traveled aimlessly through the American South for a few days, ate at cheap diners, slept in motels. Then he turned around, drove back to Maine, passed his parents' house without stopping, continued down roads that grew smaller and smaller until the gas ran out, parked on a dirt road, left the keys on the dashboard with the door unlocked, picked up a minimal camping kit, and walked into the forest. No map, no compass, no plan. Nobody saw him again for 27 years. His family never filed a missing persons report. They assumed he had left by choice, and that choice deserved to be respected. The first 3 years were nomadic. Knight moved camp frequently, slept poorly, ate what he found, roadkill, vegetables from strangers' gardens. But in 1989, he found what he was looking for: a clearing hidden between 2 giant glacial boulders, covered by a thick curtain of old trees, on terrain so disorienting and obstacle-filled that even experienced hikers avoided it. It was less than 50 kilometers from where he had been born, a 3-minute walk from the nearest cabin. Sometimes he could hear the neighbors' voices. There he stopped, and there he stayed. The camp he built over the years was a work of improvised and meticulous engineering. The ground was cleaned with military precision, branches and stones removed. The floor was lined with stacks of magazines bound with tape. The glossy pages repelled moisture and leveled the terrain. Tarps and dismantled tents covered everything, painted dark brown for camouflage. A miniature television, a radio with an antenna fixed to a tree he had cut down, tied the antenna to the trunk, re-erected the tree, and lashed it to another, a Game Boy, complete cooking utensils, and books, hundreds of them, because in the 27 years he spent there, reading was the central activity of his existence. To survive, he stole. He had learned the perfect trade for it. He understood alarms, locks, security systems. He observed the routines of residents around the lake for days before acting. He knew which families arrived in summer and left in autumn, which cabins sat empty for months. He moved only on rainy midweek nights. The rain covered tracks and muffled sounds. He never broke a window, never forced a door. When he couldn't unlock one, he removed it from its hinges entirely and replaced it afterward. He wore gloves, wore soft-soled shoes, walked only on roots and stones to leave no footprints, always varied his routes. When he found locked windows, he filed the latches with such surgical precision that he left only minimal metal shavings. When he stole propane, he replaced full cylinders with empty ones so the shortage wouldn't be noticed immediately. Sometimes he borrowed a kayak, paddled to another property, took what he needed, and returned the kayak dusted with pine needles to appear untouched. In 27 years, he committed approximately 1,000 burglaries. Food, propane, batteries, clothes, boots, books, alcohol, and candy. He never took money, never took jewelry, never took objects of sentimental value. He tidied up while in the cabins and locked the door on his way out. He didn't want other burglars to break in after him. Every time I was very conscious, I was doing something wrong, he would confess years later. I took no pleasure in it. My adrenaline spiked. I was always scared. I wanted it over as quickly as possible. The winters were the greatest challenge. Temperatures in Maine regularly drop below 0 degrees Fahrenheit, sometimes reaching -25. Night never built a fire. The smoke would be visible. The smell would travel. From November to March, he never left camp because footprints in the snow would betray him. He stockpiled supplies for 4 or 5 months of total seclusion. He slept at 7 in the evening, woke at 2:30 in the morning, the coldest point of the night. And instead of curling into his sleeping bag, he got up and walked around the clearing until he warmed. He did this all night, every winter, for 27 years. While he walked, he melted snow on a small stove for drinking water. And all that time, he never lost a finger or toe to frostburn, never got sick. He memorized every patch of poison ivy in the area, never caught it. He avoided sneezing. Sound might give him away. The hardest part to understand about Christopher Knight is not how he survived the cold. It is the silence. In nearly 3 decades, he spoke to another human being only once. In the mid-90s, he was walking a trail when he crossed paths with a hiker. Both were startled. The hiker said, "Hi." Knight, by pure reflex, replied, "Hi." They continued in opposite directions. That was the only word he spoke in 27 years. When journalist Michael Finkel, who would later write a book about him, visited him in prison and tried to understand what that silence had been, Knight said something Finkel never forgot. "Solitude requires that you desire company. I did not desire it." And then, solitude bestows an increase in something valuable, my perception. But when I applied my increased perception to myself, I lost my identity. There was no audience, no one to perform for. I became irrelevant. To put it romantically, I was completely free. He kept no mirror in camp. He used the moon as the minute hand of his clock and the seasons as the hour hand. He knew about the September 11th attacks, about wars and elections and technological advances, all picked up on the radio. But all of it was abstract and distant, like news from a different planet. When asked if he felt lonely, he replied that he didn't quite understand the concept. I never felt lonely, not once. And when asked if he was happy, he said, happy isn't the right word. I was right. I was where I was supposed to be. There were moments of despair. In the most brutal winters, when the effort felt like too much, well, he thought about simply stopping. But the part of him that wanted to stay was always stronger. For the residents around North Pond, Christopher Knight was a legend that many weren't even sure existed. Things simply disappeared. Food from the refrigerator, propane, clothing, in ways subtle enough that people sometimes doubted themselves. One woman came back from a weekend in Boston, opened the cabin door, saw everything apparently normal, and then noticed the refrigerator was open, half the food was gone, and on the counter there was a neat stack of washed and carefully piled dishes. The chill I felt in that moment never fully left me, she said. Some property owners began to suspect each other. Theories arose: Vietnam veteran, gang activity, teenagers. Some discussed putting rat poison in the food. Others started leaving supplies outside with notes. Please don't break in. Just tell us what you need. Knight never took them. He feared traps. In the 2000s, motion sensor security cameras began capturing fragments of the ghost. In 2007 came the first clear footage, a man in the shadows, moving with absolute precision. By 2013, the Pine Tree Camp, a camp for children and adults with disabilities that Knight had robbed so many times that the manager said the hermit used it as his personal Walmart, decided to act. Sergeant Terry Hughes installed silent alarms connected directly to his own phone. And in the early hours of April 4th, 2013, the alarm went off. Hughes found a 47-year-old man leaving the camp kitchen with a backpack full of supplies. The man was clean-shaven, wore aviator-style glasses from the 1980s, and moved, according to Hughes, like a cat, silently with agility, grace, and precision. He offered no resistance. When asked how long he had been in the forest, Knight answered that he had gone in shortly after the Chernobyl disaster in 1986. 27 years, from 20 to 47, an entire adult life, lived in silence in a Maine forest. The world's reaction was equal parts astonishment and fascination. The county jail was flooded with letters, phone calls, and visitors. 2 strangers appeared with $5,000 to post his initial bail. A woman proposed marriage. 5 songs were recorded about him. A Dutch artist created oil paintings exhibited in Germany. Knight refused everything, stayed silent, and when the $500 or more sent by admirers arrived at the jail, he asked that it be deposited into the Victim Restitution Fund. He was sentenced to 7 months in prison, a term he had almost entirely served while awaiting trial, plus 3 years of probation and restitution to victims. The prosecutor said a longer sentence would have been cruel. The judge agreed. Even the police agreed. After his release, his brother got him a job at a mechanic's workshop. He lived with his mother for a while, then got his own apartment. He reported to the judge every week. He completed the treatment program. He did not reoffend. Today, Christopher Knight lives in a small Maine town. He values privacy above everything. He continues to avoid social contact when he can. The man who said hi once in 27 years now has to talk every day. When asked why he had done all of it, Knight gave the only honest answer he had. I often ask myself that same question. And when journalist Finkel tried one last time to find some grand meaning, some final lesson, Knight offered a single piece of advice about what he had learned from nearly 3 decades of absolute solitude. Get enough sleep. Perhaps there is more truth in that than it seems.